right, less than 24 hours to the big budget. It's an all-out war, believe it or not, over the job crisis. A day after the resignation of two members of the National Statistical Commission hit the headlines, the government's reasons for putting a lid on NSC's jobs reports are getting clearer, it seems. A survey by the National Sample Survey Organization does show that the unemployment rate hit a high of 6.1% in the last fiscal, the highest level seen since 1972-73. NITI, however, Aayog has said that the leaked data was just a draft report and not a final one, and this one has not been endorsed. Allaying fears, NITI Aayog also says that the report does not capture the real employment seen in India. All this comes on a day when the government has revised GDP growth figures as well. And yes, we grew at 7.2% versus 6.7% in fiscal year 18 and about 8.2% in fiscal year 17, and that was indeed the year of demonetization. Coming ahead of the general elections, the data debate has clearly put the government on some sort of a back foot. Politics has already taken shape on this. You've got senior Congress party leader led by Rahul Gandhi and Chidambaram and Anand, Sharma and Kapil Sibal slammed the government for suppressing the jobs data. The government, of course, has done its own defense. Speaking to ET Now, former finance minister and rebel BJP leader Yashwant Sinha, however, said any data shared by the government cannot be trusted anymore. The big standoff over the big exercise, the union budget, is exactly what we're discussing. My own sense is that the budget, even though it's a purely economic fiscal exercise, is going to be laced with politics, and which is why on the India development debate this evening we put the spotlight to where it belongs, politics of budget 2019. Joining us, four very, very special guests. GV Narasimha Rao represents the BJP. He's also a member of the Rajya Sabha. I've got Salman Anis Soos, national spokesperson of the Congress, Swaminathan Iyer, our consulting editor, and R. Jagannathan, editorial directors for Rajya magazine. So thank you very much, all of you, for being with us. And Swami, let me just begin with you. I mean, just when we thought that the controversy couldn't get any murkier as far as the jobs data is concerned and people resigning from the National Statistical Commission, comes this bazooka that unemployment rate in India has actually climbed to 6.1%, which is the highest in 45 years. And many people are now jumping to the conclusion, is that why the government was not releasing the data?
That will obviously be the suspicion. For a long time, the CME has been publishing data showing the unemployment rate is more than 6%, worsening to 7.4% in December 2018, showing a decline of 11 million jobs during that particular calendar year. Now, some people said, you know, CMI data, why can we believe it? Now that you have the NSSO data coming out, in effect, they are confirming that the CMI data, even if not 100% accurate, are absolutely on track. So this is, on the one hand, it looks like disastrous news. On the other hand, somebody may say, why believe the data? The truth from the political point of view is the employment situation has been more than good enough for Mr. Modi to win one state election after another, to the point where he was ruling 21 states until December. And while he lost 3 states then, the vote share of the BJP remained as strong as that of the Congress in Rajasthan and Madhya Pradesh. And this for the BJP is not a bad result, because in the general election, it will be Modi versus Rahul Gandhi as distinct from Vasundhara Raje versus Gehlot, and they expect to do much better. So all I can say is that while the jobs data seem to show a lot of distress, the election outcomes are showing a completely different picture. Now,
get that question answered, and that's a very interesting point that you raise. Why is it that the jobs data is showing so much distress, but the vote share of the BJP stays intact in places like Rajasthan, even though the Congress did win there very marginally so? But Jaggi, I'll come to you, and you've done a lot of work on data of late, especially the jobs data. You advised a more nuanced reading of this data. What is the defense from the government? And just let me voice it for a minute. The defense from the government is that you're comparing very different kinds of data. This is done on a quarter-on-quarter basis. This is an annual data. Earlier, it was done on a 5-year period. I mean, is that the defense at all? And is it wrong that during the year of demonetization, India's unemployment did peak?
Yeah, two things. First of all, nobody, including the government, should be in any denial that we have some kind of jobs crisis. We may want to define the jobs crisis differently, not as a lack of jobs, but a lack of quality jobs which people are looking for in an aspirational India. So that's one part of it. as far as the data is concerned, we should read it in a nuanced way for the simple reason that NSSO data, let's take NSSO first, we get it in chunks of 5 years gaps, right? The problem with when you get such data where you are getting one point and another point, 2011-12 was actually the peak year for growth for under the UPA, when you had 3 direct stimulus programs going on. There was a monetary stimulus after 2008 which kept interest rates very low. Then there was a fiscal stimulus which cost 1,80,000 crore, and there was a long running subsidy stimulus on oil thing where we are spending 1% of GDP on that. So the growth actually peaked in 2011-12 and the jobs total there. On the other hand, 17-18 was the year after demonetization, when actually jobs and growth and all had troughed. So you are comparing one steroid driven peak with another policy driven trough. So when you are doing point to point comparison, you are not going to get the right picture. But yes, there is a jobs problem. We can talk about it more if you want.
Trough and crest, and you're right in the point that 2011, 2012 was the peak period where Indian economy was on some sort of steroids. That is not the case anymore. But the reality is that there is a job crisis, and if we are going to deny this, we will perhaps be in denial. Let me take this across to GVL Narasimha Rao. And GVL, besides just talking about the pure data that says that the problem did peak for the rural youth, the problem did peak for the male youth looking for jobs. 6.1% is a huge number when you compare it to 2.2 of 2011-12. So that's but yeah, Jaggi puts it in context. The other part is that all of this and the controversy that has preceded is almost pointing us to in a direction where it's very difficult to now believe numbers. Are we at the risk of making our data suspicious?
Supriya, you cannot selectively believe in some data and not selectively believe in another set of data as it suits you. There is a lot of attempt in the political class to present a gloomy scenario, obviously for political reasons, and that gloomy scenario had been projected from 2015 onwards. First it was an intolerant India, the world over there was a bogey that was raised, people rejected it repeatedly. During demonetization, the whole country is up in arms against demonetization. BJP will be thrashed in polls. We win a massive landslide in Uttar Pradesh. Then comes GST. Everyone says people, an entire community, business community is unhappy. They will rout BJP in Gujarat. That was disproved. Surat was supposed to be a test case, and Surat we won a landslide in Surat. So there are a lot of people who want to spread gloom, and when that gloom is not really seen in public expression of their support for the government, then you realize that there is a disconnect. I find in this data, which is not official yet, and it's only a media leak. I don't know how accurate this is because I have not been able to see the original report. But there is, you see, when you take decisions like demonetization, GST, you will certainly, your traditional surveys will have certain problems. And if indeed such a large number of people have been unemployed, you think they'll be happy rooting for the BJP? There would be riots on the streets. I think if there was there is certainly a methodological aberrations which have really not been addressed, keeping the new context and the nuances in mind. I think demonetization is a first of its kind activity. GST is also a major reform measure. So certainly when you conduct surveys, whether these surveys are designed to capture such is important to be acknowledged.
Okay. Okay, GVL, give me a minute. And there is some merit in your argument that aberrations are there, and is it fair to compare two sets of data with very two different methodology? But there is, if you're telling me that jobs were not lost during demonetization, even though it was one of a kind exercise, I would disagree with you. But Salman Soz, I think, while you would like to criticize the government and your party has taken the high moral ground of saying there has been no jobs created and all of that, I would respectfully want to point out what is really happening, because the labor force participation rate in Indian economy has been going down consistently. since 2004. From 39.5% in 2011-12 to when you were in office, it's gone down to 36.9% in fiscal year 18. Is this all on account of people who've suddenly taken to education in a big way?
Well, first of all, I don't want to get straight into the complications of LFPR. That is a very complicated subject. But first, let me answer what GVL could not, because you asked him a straight question. The damage done to India's national income statistics, damage done to India's credibility, international credibility. We have become data manipulators, and the damage to this country's reputation is incalculable. So we must understand what's happening in this country. Now, today, the government is saying, think of what the government is telling you today. Because this report was leaked, the data from this report was leaked, the government is now saying that we've revised the GDP data. And by the way, under Prime Minister Modi, the best year for the Indian economy was the year of demonetization, 8.2%. This is laughable. This is a very serious matter. I think Indians should be looking very carefully at what damage Mr. Modi and his party are doing to this country. We should all be ashamed. Now, if you take Mr. Jagannathan's, analysis, which I think, in his tweet, he had a different nuance to this labor force, to this data. But if you just listen to what he said in 2011 and 12, you're actually looking at the crest. The economy was doing really well because of fiscal stimulus. And now in demonetization, economy was not doing well. So you're comparing different data, these are different scenarios. But according to the government that Mr. Jagannathan supports very well, I know he supports the government. According to the government that 2016-17 was the best year, 8.2%. So I don't really understand what they want. There is no data.
One second. Salman, let me come there.
But the reality is...
Right.
No, wait a second. The reality is... reality is that this government, if you look at the surveys that have been shown, recently surveys have been shown that they're losing seats in a big way, and they're going to lose the election because they are damaging India.
Okay, Salman, we'll talk about seats. We'll talk about losing seats in just a minute from now. But give me a minute, and I think it's only fair that you and GVL fight it out. Let's leave the experts out of this mudslinging. But very quickly, Swami, do you believe the problem began with the fact that there are two issues that there is with this jobs data? It's not just about jobs not being created. It's not just about unemployment levels going up. It's about NITI Aayog getting involved. I mean, why did Rajiv Kumar and Amitabh Kant have to do the press conference? They've already had a lot of mudslinging happening when the GDP series was revived. So do you believe, A, because NITI Aayog is getting unnecessarily involved, and the controversy that came in from the National Statistical Commission where members resigned citing reasons that, the report had been approved, it was supposed to be out on the 19th of December, it was being sat over. Do you believe it's the controversy that's creating the suspicion, and at best, the government should accept that report, release it publicly, and let people make their own conclusions? I mean, why have people from NITI Aayog respond to what they're calling quote-unquote data that has been leaked from a draft report?
Without doubt, this whole thing stinks of some kind of manipulation. The CSO should have been bringing out this data. Why is Rajiv Kumar, why is NITI Aayog getting into the picture? I mean, these are political appointees. In the National Statistical Commission, the only two people left now are government appointees, and all the other independent economists have resigned, saying, we are supposed to be vetting and looking at the data. We are just being kept out of the loop. Why are they being kept out of the loop? So I would say, without doubt, there has been a hit to the credibility of the data the government is coming out with. Whether in the long run this is justified or not remains to be seen. But institutional erosion of a major sort has happened, and that is unquestionably a bad thing. Having said that, on some of the unemployment data, Jaggi said, we were on a great high in 11-12. 11-12, yes, and then your unemployment rate was shown as 2%. It was also 2% in 2004-5. It was also 2% in 1999. So please, it's not that, because of a high in 2011-12, the unemployment rate was exceptionally low. It was at that 2% in the two earlier periods also. Then the question is, how has it shot up? After having been fairly stable at 2, how has it suddenly shot up to 6 point something according to NSSO and 7% according to CMI? I further have to add that this kind of thing only happens normally when there is a major recession or even a depression. Again, the fall in the worker participation force that we're talking about is gone from 43% in 2004-5 down to 39% in 2011-12 and now apparently 36. This kind of collapse usually only takes place in the Great Depression. So I'm truly puzzled why there is a mystery. The data are showing some fantastic catastrophe. The catastrophe does not show up in GDP figures.
No, actually move away and make this a more big picture discussion and not just on jobs data. Jaggi, if I will ask you, the joblessness for rural male youth between 15 to 29, according to what has been reported, went from 5% in 2011-12 to 17.4% in fiscal year 18. For rural women, it went up from 4.8% to 13.6%. Now, obviously, the situation is a lot more acute for the rural sector. It is also very bad for the, the educated people, 9.7% to 15.2%. And that's how things were happening. My question is that given how acute the picture seems to be looking as far as the rural sector is concerned, can the budget move the needle at all to alleviate some of that stress? And I'm really talking about on a more big picture level. I'm really referring, in between lines to an agri-relief package. I'm referring to this jobs data laced with it.
See, coming to the rural sector, I would say this has been structurally there for a long time. And during the course of this government, you had two poor monsoon years in the first 2 years. Then you had a good monsoon year, but that was the year towards the end of which you saw two major disruptions. One was demonetization, which actually nipped the recovery in the rural sector in the bud. Then you had GST, which created another disruption. So it is only in 2018-19 you are towards the fag end, you are seeing some recovery. So what you are seeing is you actually had disinflationary tendencies in the first 4 years, except for the few 6 months in 2016-17 when agriculture started reviving. Then came the man-made disruptions, which we are now experiencing, and we are probably seeing it behind. Now, as far as the budget is concerned, I would say in the last two budgets, the needle has been moved. You changed the, in the first budget, you changed the Apprentices Act, but it hasn't yet picked up steam. Last two budgets, you have made fixed-term labor contracts available to every single industry. Then you have also subsidized the social security payments from employers over the last 2 years. So those needles are being moved, but I think the economy is not yet responding to those stimuli, because I think there are other larger issues that are holding it back, including your double balance sheet problem. You also have the fact that banks are in deep trouble. So when you have all these structural issues that are still not fully resolved, I think the other stimuli, small minor things here and there, are not going to add up to a huge explosive growth in jobs, that or growth for that matter. So the top line growth, and one more factor I will say, in the last 30 years, labor productivity has grown 6-fold, but labor wages have grown 1.5 times, which means that most of the productivity growth in labor has come not from adding people or whatever, but from capital and machinery investment. So the shift in productivity has shifted from employing more people to employing more capital. This is what happens when you have capital market reforms but no labor market reforms. So people will shift to the sector where there is a reform. So you have actually wrongly prejudiced the employers from taking on labor, they're taking on capital. Very simple.
I want to ask the Congress party, and Salman, I think you'll have to answer this question. When you talk about joblessness in India, and then your Congress party president announces, and Mr. Chidambaram, of course, expounds upon that, this whole minimum income guarantee, is this also an acceptance by the political class, and you included, that India will not be able to create the kind of jobs that we need for a population that is going to be the youngest in the world by 2030, and which is why you'll have to resort to income assurance schemes? Is there also a broad acceptance of that reality?
Well, Supriya, first, let me give credit where credit is due. Jaggi, if I may call him Jaggi, I think he's spot on. I think his second intervention, I think this is spot on. He talked about, how there were two bad monsoons. Then as the economy started recovering, then we had a man-made intervention. And, we had demonetization, then we had the GST rollout, and that has actually really hurt the economy. Now, of course, if you take that line of argument, which I agree with, by the way, then how is it that the government today announces that the year of demonetization was the best under Prime Minister Modi? That is why I think if you go to Mr. Iyer's point about something stinks here. There's some manipulation going on, and I think that's what's going on. That's why you have Amitabh Kant and Rajiv Kumar coming and kind of doing stuff that is the domain of the Central Statistical Office. Now, Amitabh Kant is also in the National Statistical Commission, but he's an ex-officio member. That is why we must be careful about tinkering with our or sabotaging our institutions. Now, to respond to your question on the minimum, income guarantee. So what's happened in this country after demonetization, after GST, there's a lot of damage that's happened in the economy. Because of that, you have people suffering. You have people in rural areas suffering. You have more joblessness. That is what we believe. That is what this report seems to indicate. So you need to, instead of, we demonetize, we need to remonetize. We need to bring more activity in. We need to provide some help to people. We need to have some dignity for people. And for that, we're going to have a targeted basic income scheme. This is not going to be a universal scheme. This is going to be targeted. And
Salman, I wonder if
our government damaged people's interests. We need to support them.
Okay, Salman, I'm sorry, I'll have to come in there. I've got little time left on the show, and I want to take this across to GVL Narasimha Rao because he represents the ruling benches here. And GVL, I'm going to bundle two questions. This is a very unique budget. It has the economic blueprint that is obviously in place, but laced with a lot of political compulsions, political reality, which is why many people are expecting a farm, an agri-relief package. There are still many who are expecting you will announce some sort of an UBI. Obviously, we can't be talking about what the budget will be, and we'll have to wait for a few more hours for that. But are political compulsions going to drive this budget? And which is why is it fair to assume that agriculture will be the focus of this budget? And, unlike a lot of others, I believe the only good thing here is that at least the debate has moved from plain Jane blanket loan waivers to we are perhaps talking about some kind of a relief package which is far more comprehensive. Go ahead, GVL.
I don't know what is in store in the budget tomorrow. I think we'll have to wait and see. But certainly questions that have been raised about the data accuracy, I think these are very, very misplaced kind of doubts. Why should the NITI Aayog vice chairperson, CEO, why should they not be addressing the media? I have not seen only statistical officers addressing the media in the past. I think to the best of my knowledge, CSO always puts out the numbers, but it is sometimes it is the economic advisors in the Ministry of Finance who come and address the media. It doesn't have to be only the Ministry of Finance advisors. A CEO of a NITI Aayog is also an extension of the government. And I find this really bizarre. If they are in a better position to explain the numbers, because they have an overarching view of the government's policies and implementation of programs, I think there is absolutely nothing wrong in coming and addressing the media. And secondly, I think let's look at the innate wisdom of our people. Whatever numbers you trot out here, the man in the village or the man on the street will go by what he is experiencing in his life. And he's not going to be, we are not trying to impress anyone with those simply giving certain numbers. A GDP number 6 or 8 is not going to really change his life unless he sees a change in himself. And we are not trying to influence anybody. And are you saying the entire world is, the World Bank is saying we are the fastest growing economy? In the next 2 years, they have predicted more than 7.5% growth. So are they also completely obvious to the realities? And I don't know why Congress has only great faith in China. And do you know what numbers China is trotting out? They are real. I think China people, the entire world has suspicion about China. Nobody has a doubt about India. This is only a part of the propaganda that has been unleashed. No, Chinese numbers are always in doubt. But never are numbers.
Just 10 seconds.
It is the job of the statistical office or statisticians to put out numbers. But anyone in the government can explain.
10 seconds.
We are not China. No, but seconds. Congress has been advocating China.
We don't want to be China either. I'm sorry.
10 seconds.
I am sorry, we are completely out of time here. But GVN Narasimha Rao and Salman Soz, I'm sorry, sir, I am out of time. I will have to cut short this debate here. The reality is that the economic realities that face us right before the budget are perhaps in direct contrast to the political compulsions. We will have to wait and watch what this budget will do. Is this going to be a simple vote on account exercise, or is this going to move beyond that, push the envelope and really talk about a farm relief package, a universal basic income, some of those things that are being widely speculated upon. But like I said, the economic blueprint is in very, very sharp contrast to what the political compulsions are. This is a budget that's coming right before the elections, and which is why we thought for 24 hours before the budget, it's only fair that we get politicians on the show to thrash it out. Of course, the debate, meanwhile, has moved to data credibility, data integrity, and political class will slug it out on that as well. That's it then. Thank you very much for being with us on this edition of the India Development Debate. We take a quick breather, and thank you very much, all our guests, Swaminathan Nair, R. Jagannathan, Salman Soz, and of course, GVN Narasimha Rao, for joining us.